Welcome back to The Burn. I am Ryan Van Dever, and we are presented to you by Hot Zone Sports. The information that you need to know, built with you in mind. For the people, by the people, and with the people. Remember, our show is wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. So if you could rate and review us, we would really appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, first off, congratulations. And secondly, subscribe to the show and hit that notification button so you will always know when our fresh content drops. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And wherever you like to social media, we are there. That's right. You can find us at Hot Zone Sports. Just look for the logo. And today, we have a special guest once again, Mr. EatDaWheaties. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great today. It's nice to be back here. So let's talk some sports and have a good time.
We had an absolute ridiculous weekend of games. Now, we will discuss the fights here later on the episode, but there was fights, there was 8 overtime games, there was blowouts, there was close contests. You couldn't get away from it. And if you are like me or EatDaWheaties, we loved every single second of it.
Yeah, it was good. You saw a lot of fights this weekend. The most notable was Michigan and Ohio State. What a game. What a game that was. Game of all time.
Yeah. So why don't we just go ahead and dive right in? So this game wasn't on Saturday, but we knew it had massive implications. Georgia Tech. The 8 overtime game. The season was on the line in a game where the entire football world thought that Georgia was going to roll through the Yellow Jackets. But just like Yellow Jacket formula, they beat Miami, and they were putting their eyes on Georgia in this massive rivalry. The final drive for the Bulldogs in regulation was who they are. A tough, gritty team who through 12 games this season just find a way to win. Not to call out the Chiefs, but I'm just saying, they're kind of like the Chiefs in that way. The quarterback hasn't played the greatest all season long, but lo and behold, they end up pulling out this game after being 17 down at halftime against the Yellow Jackets. And they end up winning 44-2 in 8 overtimes. Georgia did not hold a lead during the entire regulation, and they faced deficits of 20-6 and 27-13 in the second half. What did you take away from this game?
So the biggest thing I saw from this game was Haynes King ability to just absolutely take over. He had 300 yards through the air, 100 on the ground, and 5 total touchdowns, but 3 on the ground, 2 in the air. He did great. People didn't really think a lot of him coming into this year. He's really put on a good show. But going back to that Chiefs comment you made about Georgia, Carson Beck not playing quite as well as he has been. Nate Frazier, running back. He is a freshman. Their starting running back at the beginning of the season got injured, just like a guy in the Chiefs who just came back this week. So they've been relying on a freshman to carry the running game. And yeah, I mean, they're injured, but they've made their way to 10-2, and I would say they're a lock. I don't really see a way that they get out of the playoff unless they get absolutely destroyed this weekend. So yeah.
I mean, this game, it was really a microcosm in many cases. Nothing was going right for the Bulldogs in the first half. They couldn't get anything done offensively. They were dropping balls on third downs, missing field goals. They couldn't find any rhythm whatsoever. They were just helpless. But Georgia won its 31st straight game at home in what finished as the second longest game in college football history. There's a stat for you, stat nerds. Georgia has now won 7 straight games over Georgia Tech, but it was clear that the Yellow Jacks are closing the gap on Georgia. Georgia ended up winning after stopping 5 of Georgia Tech's 6 two-point attempts in overtime. The Bulldogs only converted a pair of 2 conversions in overtime, but it proved to be enough. But my question is this. If Georgia Tech can put up 42 points on Georgia, what is there to say that Texas can't do the same? I mean, they have more weapons on offense, that's for sure.
Well, that's going to come down to quarterback play for this Texas and Georgia game. You know, the SEC championship. We saw the first time that they played that Ewers, he played decently, but he had 2 touchdowns and an interception. Um, and he only led Texas to about 15 points. If you see a repeat of that after this Georgia Tech game, I honestly think they could pull Quinn at halftime if he's underperforming and maybe throw Arch in. Um, you know, he hasn't had that much experience yet, but he's shown that he's able to play and he's able to make those plays. Um, Texas is definitely going to be able to score. Let's just see if they're able to put up as much of a fight as Georgia Tech did.
All right, so there's one injury I would like to get into for Georgia. It's basically been a revolving door of running back so far this season. Trevor Etienne, he has been out for the past 3 weeks, and according to Coach Kirby Smart, quote, Trevor is a ways away. I still don't know because we haven't even seen those guys. He wasn't really close to playing this week. So I don't know I don't know how that's going to play out. You know, the Bulldogs have been playing Nate Frazier, as EatDaWheaties has said. You know, he rushed for 50 yards on 11 carries and a touchdown, and he ended up getting the 2-point conversion in that Georgia win. Frazier leads the team in rushing with 587 yards and 8 touchdowns. But if Etienne can come back, he's got 477 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns in 8 games. If he can come back, that is going to be something very big for the Georgia Bulldogs offense when they have really struggled for most of the year, whether it be finding pass catchers, whether it be rushing the ball. But they're going to need more than Nate Frazier to rush the ball because that Texas defense is nasty, and we saw how nasty they were against A&M this weekend.
Yes, I mean, they took the ball away from A&M, and they didn't really let A&M build anything whatsoever on the offensive side of the ball. Total domination on offense. 100 yards on the ground for A&M, 150 through the air, 4.4 yards to play. I mean, yeah, this Texas defense is good. We also saw in the first game against Georgia, they were able to intercept Carson Beck 3 times. So I would say if Carson Beck makes those decisions again, maybe Texas is able to pull away and kind of put a beat down on Georgia. It depends on some player health. It also depends on if Georgia is going to be able to shut down Texas running game. They ran for 240 yards against A&M, and Quintravion Wisner, 33 carries, 186 yards. You can't let that happen if you're Georgia. You have to get them to under 3 yards to carry, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be an interesting game that we will talk a little bit more later on. But let's go ahead and move on to, I don't know. Y'all might hate me for saying this, but probably the most boring game of the weekend. There was not a lot of offense that came into this game. South Carolina, Clemson. Let's get right into it. The Gamecocks are now winners of 6 straight after defeating Clemson on Saturday. They had 3 turnovers, and the Tigers had 2 turnovers. It wasn't a turnover-free type of game for any reason whatsoever. The Gamecocks, they ended up with 7 penalties for 66 yards, while the Tigers had 3 penalties for 15 yards. Lenora Sellers was obviously the highlight of the game. 164 yards passing, 166 yards rushing. Like, he absolutely balled out. And I'll go ahead and say it. I was not predicting this because he had turnover prone issues all season long. So I figured the trend was going to continue. And Clemson has a good defense. So I don't know. What do you think, man?
Um, so for anyone who hasn't been following South Carolina this year, uh, I didn't really know a lot about Lenore Sellers. But everyone's gonna know his name after this game because you don't really see a whole lot of quarterbacks going on 166 yards on 16 carries. That is almost Lamar
Nope.
Jackson numbers at Louisville. You have to,
Yeah.
that's special. Although maybe we'll have to see if it's a one-time thing. I don't think it will be, but he outplayed Klubnik, and that was basically the game. I mean, they won by 3. Um, at Clemson, I would say Gamecocks are definitely putting on a good performance right now and trying to make it hard for the committee to leave them out. Personally, I'm not sure if either team will make the college football playoff. Uh, I don't know. I don't like 3 loss teams in the playoffs, but maybe the committee thinks different. I do know that if South Carolina does end up in it, then whoever's playing them is going to have to game plan for that quarterback rushing attack they have.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, in regards to getting into the college football playoff. I mean, they have head-to-head losses against Ole Miss and Alabama. So you already know if Alabama doesn't get in, you're going to have a slew of fans, prior coaches, all these people coming out saying we deserve 4 teams in the college football playoff. The Big Ten and the SEC are big proponents when it comes to having 4 teams in. You don't have the best conferences anymore, man. You really don't. Okay. When it comes to fair, okay, what this college football playoff committee is going to have to realize is, I think with this 12-team playoff, it's actually going to make this shit worse. Meaning, last year, Florida State, they didn't get in. Now, obviously, they played like complete garbage in that bowl game against Georgia, and they were proven why they shouldn't have got let in. But here's the thing. You have under the radar teams, okay? Notre Dame's obviously going to get in. The winner of the Big 12 playoff is going to get in. But nobody else. I think Colorado is going to have a massive issue with them not getting in when they haven't had too many letdowns this season. I mean, say Indiana doesn't end up getting in. They're going to have a big gripe too because they have 1 loss. And then that 1 loss is against Ohio State. Like, I think this college football playoff committee, they're going to get run over and spit on for all of their decisions because it's, yes, you go from 4 to 12, but if you're primarily selecting the Big Ten and the SEC over the Big 12 and all these other conferences, there's going to be a massive issue right now.
Yeah, it's some people on Twitter. I know it's just Twitter, but they've been saying that, if some of these conferences just keep getting disrespected, if there's grounds for an antitrust lawsuit on ESPN and the selection committee, honestly, I hope it doesn't get that bad, but we'll just have to see. I mean, I could make a case for Arizona State and Iowa State to make it over a team like Tennessee, but I think right now, what's projected at least is Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Miami, Georgia, Tennessee, SMU, Indiana, Boise State, and Arizona State. So that's 1 Big 12
Yeah.
team, 3 from the Big 10, 2 from the ACC, 1 independent, which is Notre Dame, and then we have also another 3 from the SEC. So that's 6 from those two leagues right there.
Well, I don't think you're going to get 2 from the ACC, especially with Miami losing over the weekend. And what a joke their defense is. Sorry, I got to keep it real, guys. I don't sugarcoat a damn thing. Their defense is just putrid. If they get into the playoff, they're going to lose their first game, get knocked out. Easy. All right? So you got SMU and Clemson playing the ACC championship. If Clemson wins, they're not getting into the college football playoff. They're just not. They don't have the resume. They have too many losses. And let's just say they let a 3-loss ACC team into the college football playoff. Do you think the entire SEC conference is not going to bitch and moan all the way to the mama's house because Alabama doesn't get in or South Carolina doesn't get in? Like South Carolina, a 3-loss team, I can see them getting in just because they've won 6 straight. And they look damn good doing it. But you have Alabama, who just beat the living piss out of Auburn, and they're going to expect to be put in. Yes, you have losses, but in the SEC, you have good losses. No, I'm tired of hearing that. Like, when you get your ass ran out of the building, it's not a good loss. You got hammered. So I don't see how the SEC can bitch and moan when they are getting all of these teams or want all of these teams to get in. They're going to get Georgia, Texas, and they're going to want Alabama and South Carolina or Ole Miss. It's just wild.
Yeah, it's wild. And to correct myself earlier, I said 3 Big Ten teams is actually 4. So we have 7 from those leagues,
Yeah.
5 from the rest. Now, SEC thinks that they're going to get Texas, Georgia, Tennessee. I would also expect them to think that they should get one other team over Indiana in. But, yeah, I mean, they're gonna be crying about it one way or the other. I'm not trying to be a homer, but man, I'm not an SEC. The SEC just isn't that great this year, and to be honest, I just don't see it. Maybe in years previous, you could argue that even 5 could be from the SEC, but not this year. And
This is the type of year where the SEC, the top teams, have been losing to the bottom teams, and it's usually the other way around. And this year, it's just not like that. And the SEC doesn't have a lot of argument when it comes to getting these teams in. When your team loses to Vanderbilt, when Ole Miss loses to Kentucky, who has been garbage all year, like, you have lost the benefit of the doubt that you are a dominant conference and you deserve to have 4 teams in. That is all I'm going to say about that.
yep, another point I'm going to add on is, Oklahoma State. We talked before about how is Gundy gone? They went 0-9 in Big 12 play. Well, they beat Arkansas. Arkansas then turned around and beat Auburn, and then kept it a 4-point game against A&M, and then they beat Tennessee, and they beat Mississippi State, and then Missouri almost lost to them. I mean, the parity is better than it's ever been, and I think a lot of people are just forgetting that. I think the SEC has a good argument for Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, and everyone outside of that little bubble. Sorry, better luck next year. I mean, you didn't put the product out on the field.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I can't wait for Tuesday. I just tell you this much. We are probably going to do a podcast just on Wednesday reacting to the college football playoffs because it's going to be wild. I already know it is. But let's get back into it. Let's talk about Michigan, Ohio State. Good God. I don't think anybody in America, not even the bettors, unless you're El Presidente Dave Portnoy putting millions of dollars on Michigan. I don't think anybody had their money on Michigan because they are walking into this game struggling. They haven't they're running out a quarterback that just has not been good. Like they've tried just about every player that they can plug in at quarterback. And then, like, your defense is pretty solid. You're going to have some guys taking off that team, going in the NFL draft. Obviously, they have a solid defense, but that offense has been struggling all season long. But it was after the game that was more entertaining because Gus Johnson, God love him, he's the most energetic broadcaster I've heard in probably the past decade. He's talking about Michigan planting the flag being disrespectful when his game-winning call was literally, Michigan didn't cheat this time.
That so I get how people can think that the flag planting wasn't like, I would, if I was a player, I'd probably take some offense to that too, obviously. But they beat you at home as multiple touchdown underdogs.
Yeah.
I mean, you can fight about it, but I mean, you just have to take that. You still have something to play for. Obviously, Michigan still has a bowl game, but you're still probably in for the college football playoff unless Penn State embarrasses you really, really bad. And then maybe not. I'm not sure. But I know what you can't have. You can't have Will Howard throwing 2 interceptions and having a little bit over 50% completion percentage. And as much as that hurts to say, as a K-State fan, he cost them the game. But let's also not forget that Michigan is able to shut down their run game. I mean, you have Quinshawn
Oh, yeah.
Judkins and Travion Henderson. You should be able to get more than 67 yards on the ground on 22 carries. So, Michigan just wanted it more this game. An interesting stat that I had seen is that I don't remember how many meetings it's been, but whoever leads in rushing has almost always won. And Michigan won the rushing game. So, yeah, interesting game.
It's just, there's some wild things here, all right? Michigan has now beat Ohio State 4 straight times. And this was considered a massively disappointing year from the Wolverines. Nobody expected, as I said earlier, for Michigan to beat Ohio State in this game. It was more going to be a walkover type game for Ohio State. But this is the first 4-game winning streak since 1988 to 91. It has been 1,829 days as of this recording since Ohio State has beaten Michigan. Ohio State spent $20+ million on NIL to get the best players to beat Michigan, and they still couldn't get the job done.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What are you doing, Ryan Day? Is he gone? Do you think Ryan Day is over after the college football playoff?
Well, that's funny you talk about Ryan Day because let's go over Ryan Day. All right. Versus Michigan, he's 1-4. Versus the rest of the Big Ten, he's 47-1. Right? So, is the Ryan Day era over with Ohio State? I know this is a crazy thing to say. Earlier in the year, we're talking about is Franklin's era done with Penn State? Like, they can't beat Ohio State. Ryan Day can't beat Michigan. Like, it's some wild stuff in the Big Ten, man.
You know, it's crazy to think about firing a coach that consistently goes like 11-1 and 10-2 and gets you into the playoff. But you also can't justify spending $20+ million on your roster every year now and not making it to the national championship game at the very least. And losing to Michigan,
Yeah.
really puts any dent in my confidence for them to actually make that game. So, yeah. I don't know.
I mean, you have Oregon going up against Penn State for the Big Ten championship. I don't think anybody is thinking that Penn State is going to beat Oregon. Oregon has just cruised through their schedule. I think the biggest issue they had was early in their season when they ran up against Ashton Jeanty and Boise State. But they run through the schedule. Yeah, they had a tough game against Wisconsin, but it was at Wisconsin, and that's a tough place to play. Not giving any explanations or any reasons why I'm overhyping Oregon or anything like that, but the fact remains not a lot of people are talking about Oregon because they just ran through their schedule.
I think currently Oregon is 100% my pick to win the title. Obviously, upsets happen in college football, and that's just what happens. But they're predicted to play the winner of Georgia and Tennessee, and both of those teams, maybe in their prime, would terrify Oregon fans. But this year, uh, I just think Oregon wins, beats them, and then maybe they get to play Ohio State again in the semifinal. But we'll see. I mean, Oregon, I would say, is best team in the country right now. Um, but yeah, I mean, Ohio State fans, are you okay with 11-1, 11-2, whatever, 12-0, and not winning the title? Or would you rather try to get someone new and take the risk of going 7-5 next year? I mean, it's all about the risk that you're willing to take, because that's the conversation that's happening within like Iowa circles right now with Kirk Ferentz. Is, do we keep him
Yep.
or do we let him go? Because we go above 500 every year, but we are always a little bit on that mid side of the good teams. So there's something to think
Yep.
about. Personally, I don't think they fire him, but I would understand it if they did.
All I'm going to say is one last point here. The boosters have a lot of pull when it comes to big programs like that. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, a lot of boosters. But let's get into what was pegged to be the game of the week, Texas and Texas A&M. The Texas Longhorns and Aggies renewed their rivalry on Saturday for the first time since 2011. Number 3 Texas entered their Week 14 matchup looking for bragging rights over their rival in the Lone Star State and to stay in position to earn a bye in the college football playoff. Number 20 Texas A&M needed a win on Saturday to still have a chance to stay alive in the college football playoff conversation and to possibly be in the SEC championship. But the Longhorns raced out to a 17-0 lead at halftime. Texas A&M's defense stiffened in the second half, forcing 2 turnovers, including a third quarter pick 6 of Quinn Ewers that put the Aggies back in the game. But the biggest problem for the Aggies in this game was the fact that they could not get anything going offensively. And they ended up losing this game 17-7.
Tough loss for A&M fans. But they're a uniquely terrifying team in the fact that they have one of the biggest college fan bases in America. So, you know how Dave Portnoy just spent $10 million to get Michigan a shiny new quarterback next year. I cannot imagine what some of these boosters for A&M would be willing to do to get them into the football playoff. So I'm terrified of them. Obviously, they didn't win this year, and Texas also has a very devoted fan base. So I bet these two teams will be very good. Obviously, Texas was better today, had better quarterback play overall, although Ewers, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and he also fumbled. But their run game, dominant. They had over 240 yards on the ground. I mean, ground and pound football, it's very easy to win when you can have that many yards on the ground. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Texas, good team. I'm expecting good things of them. Texas A&M, maybe next year, but 8-4, better than you were. So
Now, Texas is going to face the 10-2 Georgia Bulldog squad that defeated the Longhorns 30-15 on October 2nd or October 20th at DKR Texas Memorial Stadium in Austin. The winner of the SEC championship is going to get an automatic bid from the CFP selection committee and a bye in the first round playoff. But the problem that I do see that many fan bases of other teams not named Georgia is going to run into is the fact that there's going to be a 3-loss Georgia team. Well, let me let you know. These 3 losses, every single team that they lost to is in the college football playoff rankings. So take that for what you will. If Georgia gets into the college football playoff and they end up losing to Texas, I'm not going to bitch and moan about it because they've had the toughest schedule outside of Oregon all season long. So, yeah.
I mean, 10-3, runner up in the SEC. I mean, I'm okay with that. I think 3
Yeah.
teams from the SEC this year get in, so yeah, I'm okay with that. Um, it'll just be interesting to see what happens if Georgia wins. Where do they put Texas in the rankings? But yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. Um, if you're a Georgia fan, you gotta hope yours, or sorry, not yours. What's his name? Carson Beck doesn't throw another 3 interception game. Because I think Texas would actually be able to move the ball this time. Also,
Yeah.
if you're a Georgia fan, you gotta wonder, if Trevor Etienne will play. Right now I lean towards no, but he had 3 touchdowns the last time that you guys played. So, um, just keep a watchful eye on your uh, depth chart this week and just kind of see what happens. It should be a good game. I'm excited.
Notre Dame and USC. This is probably the most athletic team that the Irish have played up to this point this season. There's no probably about it. It is, all right? And the back and forth battle proved it. You know, the pick basically came down to 2 pick sixes for Notre Dame. Without those 2 pick sixes, who knows the outcome of that game? USC could have won ultimately because the game really came down to defense. Neither defense could stop neither offense. And what I mean by that is the Trojans had 557 total yards, 197 rushing yards, 360 passing yards on total offense. And the Irish, they had 436 total offensive yards. Yeah. They had 258 rushing yards and 178 passing yards. Saying that, this was not a defensive battle, unlike Texas and Texas A&M anyways. Notre Dame is going to be in the college football playoffs whether anyone likes it or not. Do they deserve it? Maybe. Maybe not. That's for the experts to figure out. But it is where it lies. They are going to be in the college football playoff. Whether you like it or not, you need to come to terms with it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're in a day and age where an 11-1 team gets left out, then the sport's gonna end up dying. I am not a Notre Dame fan. I do think that they're a good team. Let's see who they're supposed to play. SMU. So that'll be an interesting game, actually. I have no idea which way to lean on that. But yeah, I mean, this is the most athletic team they've played, and that was like the big thing for Notre Dame was that um, they were able to slow the game down until it was ready to open up. And this one, they kind of had to just keep pace, and that's something we haven't seen them do all year. Um, especially, well, I mean, USC 6-6, they're not great, but they played very, very well. 360 yards on the ground or on the air, 3 touchdowns. Those 2 interceptions really did the USC Trojans in as they lost by 14. So I would say that is probably the most impressive win for Notre Dame this year for me. I was worried that they would get out athleticism by some of these kind of teams, but they did not. So good win. Uh, Good way to head into the playoff.
Notre Dame is a team that has strung off 10 straight wins. Okay. Yes, it's probably been against average competition. I think out of Texas, outside of a Texas A&M win, their best win was Louisville, and that's not impressive by any means. Yes, they beat Army, but coming into that Army game, we all knew how that was going to roll out. Yes, they beat Navy when Navy was undefeated, but the fact still remains the best thing you can do as a college football playoff hopeful is play the schedule that is in front of you, and they have done that. Yes, they lost to Northern Illinois, probably the most embarrassing loss in Notre Dame history. But the fact still remains 10 straight wins, and they're looking damn good doing it.
Yeah, I mean 11-1, just like Indiana. I would say leaving either of those teams out is a crime. So yeah, they should be set to be in. I really don't see a way that they are out. There would have to be some really weird things happening for them to get out. Um,
Yeah.
if anything at all was to happen, I could actually see SMU or Indiana getting out before Notre Dame did. So we'll just have to see what happens championship weekend for that.
Yeah. Sometimes we get into some NFL action. And in this episode, since Mr. EatDaWheaties is a massive Chiefs fan, I'm going to let him take the helm. What happened against the Raiders, man?
So our defense went from 2024 Chiefs defense, and apparently we subbed into 2018 Chiefs defense, which they weren't bad, but we let Aiden O'Connell throw for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's not what we've done all year, and that's how we've won. So I'm glad that we won, but I'm glad that we didn't play a decent team this week. Good thing we played the Raiders and not any other team at the Pulse. So that was terrifying. Um, I mean, Pacheco's back from injury. They only let him have 7 carries, but he averaged 6.3 yards. D Hop, um, apparently is our best receiver right now, so we're just a retirement home for all the best players in the league. 4 catches on 90 yards for 22.5 average. And then Travis Kelce was second in receiving, and then Noah Gray was third. So tight end fest right now. Chiefs, if you're a fan, you need that defense to step up again. I know we've had a few injuries in the backfield, and especially offensively we have. We're 11-1. We just clinched a playoff spot because we just clinched the AFC West. But we can't let off the gas now. That 1 seed is going to be very useful for us if we keep getting injured this year. So that's about all I have to say. Hopefully we don't let up 340 yards next week to the Chargers. Oh boy, that'll be good. But yeah, that's what I have to say.
But I will say that the Chiefs do have some good news coming. Marquise Hollywood Brown, he is expected that he could play weeks 16 or 17, just in time for the playoffs. Obviously, Rashee Rice, he's done for the year. But having Hollywood Brown back, ever since that preseason injury on the first or second play of the season, I mean, that's going to add another weapon into the offense, and I have a feeling that it's going to make the offense for the Chiefs even more electric because offensively, your weapons just like you said, there's not that many weapons. Yeah, you got Pacheco back, but he's never really been much involved in the pass game. And Kelce, he's looking like he's slowing down. And then you got D Hop. Now, if you can have D Hop on one side and you can throw Brown into the slot, that's going to make that offense even more electric, especially when every fan in the NFL is calling the Chiefs frauds to begin with.
Well, let's just imagine this from a Chiefs perspective. Imagine if we, at the beginning of the season, you said that we could have had D-Hop, Kelsey, Rasheed Rice, and Marquise Brown all lined up at the same time.
Yeah.
And then plus Xavier Worthy. I don't know if we run any 5 receiver sets, but yeah, I mean, um, if we just keep getting healthier, I assume we're gonna keep playing a little bit better. Injuries to our kicker also kind of hurt that, but Matthew Wright's been filling in pretty damn good. So yeah, I'm not happy with that game overall, but I'm happy with where the team's at.
So, how many losses do you think that the Chiefs are going to end up with the rest of their schedule?
So our next game is the Chargers, and then we have Browns, Texans, Steelers, Broncos. Honestly, I think the Broncos might, because we would probably rest our starters that day anyway, because that's the last game before the playoffs. We already, unless the 1 seed comes down that much with Buffalo. But I'm thinking Browns Broncos. It seems that you're not going to expect. Everyone thinks the Texans are going to magically win against the Chiefs, but honestly, they've been okay, but they haven't, performed everyone's expectation as super obvious Super Bowl like pick this year.
Yeah.
So I would say Chiefs fans that are listening, 14 wins, probably 13. So 13-3 is what I'm gonna say.
All right, so it's my time for the segment that every Colts fan comes here to watch, and we're going to talk about the Colts. So I have 4 things to say about the Colts. The 4 things we learned against the Patriots today. The first thing, Anthony Richardson is still growing. This was his second game-winning drive in 3 games. Now, growth is the word. Has he been perfect by any means? No, he is not. But he's 22 years old. Him and Drake May are the same age, if you don't realize that, right? And Anthony Richardson, I think this is his 12th game as a pro. And before that, he played 1 season at Florida, and he didn't even start until his senior season at his high school. So that is one thing. All you want to see is growth. Yes, he went 12 for 24, but I'm telling you, if we had Brock Bowers, the offense would be totally different. Now, every single team that doesn't have a tight end that's worth a shit can say the same thing. Yes, I get it. There's a reason why I wanted Brock Bowers drafted, but thank you, Oakland Raiders. Now, Brock Bowers is going to have to deal with your poverty franchise for the next 4 seasons. Now, let's get into Mark Glowinski. You probably don't know that name, Mr. EatDaWheaties, but I will say he was signed to the practice squad, and he just needs to go ahead and get signed to the active roster because he had an absolutely amazing game. We have struggled for most of the season when it came in terms to that right guard position. And today, we did not have any issues whatsoever with that right guard position. Glowinski played that perfectly. So, Colts, just go ahead, pay that man, because our other options aren't even worth talking about. Just pay that man, please. Next, the Colts defense. I'm going to try to keep my composure here, but the Colts defense struggled against the worst offense in the NFL. It's not a good look. Yes, they have a bye this week, so they might be able to figure that shit out. But guess what? They have the Denver Broncos next and Bo Nix in 2 weeks. Are we really going to figure this out? They are actually getting worse at tackling. At this point in the season, they are getting worse at tackling. That's what you're throwing out there. Oh, hey, Drake May. You know what his weakness is? Man-to-man coverage. We're not going to do that because Hey, Gus Bradley. I'm an old school guy. Let's go ahead and do zone coverage till the death. You know what? On that final possession of New England, they blitzed him 3 straight times. What happened? Oh, they punted the ball away. But hey, let's not change things. Gus Bradley, I don't care. He needs to be gone. I and damn near every Colts fan is sick and tired of his old school type defensive schemes. It is not doing anything for the Indianapolis Colts. If anything, it's making things worse. And yes, I get it. With a new scheme that comes in, we're going to be getting rid of players that don't fit that scheme. I get all that. I don't really give a shit because this defense right now reminds me of Peyton Manning's defense. Hot shit. And the last thing is I've already gone through it a little bit, but this tight end group is just still a struggle. And Anthony Richardson desperately needs them to execute. The drops by the wide receivers and the tight ends is still a massive issue. The only thing that was different this week from last week's debacle against the Lions was the fact that there weren't so many penalties where all of the big plays were called back. But yes, Anthony Richardson had a 50% pass completion. But do not put all of that on this man because everybody knows drops, they are actually a stat. And no, they are very difficult to find. But if I were to gander a guess as to who is leading the NFL in drops, I would have to say the Indianapolis Colts. What do you got to say, man?
Yeah, I believe that you're correct in that because I think they showed that during the game that you lead the league in drops this year. So, congratulations on your Chiefs impression. I know you all enjoy that very much. But yeah, I mean Drake May, 240 yards, a touchdown, interception. You really don't want to see that when you're still alive in a playoff hunt. But you got the W. So you got outperformed on every side offensively, but I mean, you're able to get the W. Anthony Richardson, I am a believer. I think that he will get better. He is very athletically gifted, and he just has to get a little bit better at reading defenses. But receivers, that's going to be your main thing this offseason. And hopefully you guys can get some tight ends in the draft. Maybe I don't know if there's any good ones this year, but take a shot.
There actually are. On the Colts podcast that I do on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There you go, Josh. We are going to talk about it. But the fact remains, and I told my son this today, get rid of every tight end on that team except Will Mallory because Will Mallory has been the only one that has been able to somewhat execute anything. Ogletree, I'm tired of you. Jelani Woods, I know you're injured again, but there's the door. All of these tight ends, they don't do anything spectacularly. They do one thing okay. Let's just like the tight end room. When they walk into the room, I'm sure the tight end coach goes, meh. Like, there's nothing spectacular about this group. And you can call me a Colts hater, but I've been a Colts fan for 28 years, so you can go see the door too with all those tight ends. But I am just going to tell you, there's a guy out of Notre Dame, Mitchell Evans. He's a good guy. You got that Michigan out of tight end who obviously hasn't, when it comes to stats, it hasn't panned out very well. But if you actually watch him, he's been a good player. And then you have that guy out of Penn State, and he caught a pass this weekend And the way he was running was just like a spitting image of Travis Kelce. He caught the ball, did a spin move, did a juke, and gained an additional 15 to 20 yards after the catch. Like, give me some of that. But what's going to happen is the Colts probably in the draft are going to be selecting somewhere anywhere from 15 to 18, and they're going to go for defense. And then in the second round, we'll throw another nugget towards another tight end who won't fit the scheme of things and won't help Anthony Richardson. On that final drive, I can tell you one thing. Anthony Richardson went to his tight ends on back-to-back plays. Tell me, please, that a tight end that is capable would not help out this offense. You can't.
I don't have anything to say. From what I've seen, it has been not good. So draft a tight end, especially in the first or second round. Don't draft some defensive lineman that we've never heard of before, please. Save that for round 3 or 4 because you might need one. But yeah, I mean, Colts, you're still alive in the playoffs. Whether or not you are happy about that or if you're dreading playing more games, I don't know.
It's just going to be a wild. Man, I don't even know. The Colts are 6-7 right now, and they're basically going to have to win out. And so if you look at the Colts schedule, as I already said, they have the Broncos next. They have their bye week. So hopefully Braden Smith can get healthy. Hopefully our centers can get healthy because we are on our third string center right now, Danny Pinter. Like, we just need to get healthy. All right. So we have the Broncos next, the Titans, the Giants, and then the Jaguars. All winnable games. I will say one thing against the Broncos, and I will not divulge too much information because I do a podcast on Tuesdays. What I will say is I don't think that they're going to have problem with many of the teams except the Broncos because they have a legit top 15 defense and their passing attack is ridiculous. And the biggest weakness for the Colts defensively is their secondary because we have injuries just across the board. So since you predicted your record, I am going to say, man, I'm just having a hard time overlooking the Broncos. You're playing in Denver. Everything's going to have to work right against Peyton. Man, that's just hard. I think the Colts end up with a record of 9-7, and they just missed the playoffs. And guess what? They get nothing for it. Jim Irsay might put a flag up there saying almost playoff participant, and we'll get a 18th draft pick in the draft. I don't know, something like that. But I will say, at least we're not the Dallas Cowboys to the point to where the team sucks. But hey, let's rattle off a couple of wins and give some false hope to the Cowboys organization and worsen our draft pick.
Oh boy. Cursed life that Colts fans live right now.
It's not pretty. It's quite depressing. But that is going to be it for the show today. Thank you, EatDaWheaties, for joining us again. It has been our pleasure to just talk college football and NFL.
Yeah, I love being here. So, yeah, it's a good time. Hopefully, you guys get to see a few more wins this week. And yeah, I'll be out. Always great to see you.
But before you guys leave, give this video a thumbs up. Can you do that for me? YouTubers, please. Please. It really helps us pop in a big way. Everything here is free. That is all we ask of you. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of the episode. And if you were on podcasts or on Apple or Spotify, drop us that 5-star rating and review. It does help us out tremendously. So thank you guys for doing that, and follow us on all of our social media platforms at Hot Zone Sports and EatDaWheaties on Twitter. Enjoy the sports pages that is meant for you, because this is truly why we do this. This is not for me. It is entirely for you, for the people. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, click that notification bell, and have a blessed week.